Today, we speak to the man behind the incredible book, Uncommon Sense, a Gen X tale and an inspirational guide to advocate for yourself. Let us all welcome to the podcast, David Albert Francoeur.
Hi, David. My name is Maria, and today on the podcast, we're diving into a story of resilience, faith, and the power of self-advocacy. Our guest, David Francoeur, author of Uncommon Sense, a Gen X tale, and an inspirational guide to advocate for yourself. David, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Maria, and thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to jumping in and discussing the book.
All right. I'm very honored that you took time to give me some space of your I'm sure your schedule is hectic, so thank you so much for being here. Well, anyway, David, how's life been lately?
Well, good. However, as is very common with this cancer that's called glioblastoma, which I believe affects 10,000 people a year in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
About 3 months ago, I went to see my doctors, and they told me that my brain tumor had grown back. So essentially, I was put back to the very beginning and had to come up with a whole new plan to essentially save my life. I had brain surgery about 10 weeks ago,
Oh my.
and I'm currently working with my doctors on a variety of what they call clinical trials so
Mm-hmm.
that I have access to some brand new medications called immunotherapy, which, as the name suggests, are medications that help to fight the cancer on a cellular level. So I'm doing everything I can, and I'm determined to beat it again.
Oh,
And I'll just say, in this time, by taking these immunotherapy medications, that's really the first time it's been available on the market,
oh.
that we might be able to fix it so that the tumor never grows back.
Hopefully it happens, but let me take you back when it first started. Am I correct? You were 10 years old when you were first diagnosed with this disease, this cancer?
No, no, that's not correct. I have a story in the book of a memory when I was 10 years old.
Oh, all right. Because I was like browsing through and the 10-year-old line stuck into me. And I said, oh my God, at 10 years old. So it's not correct. All right. So
That's right.
when were you first diagnosed with this? What
Uh,
age?
well, it was 2020, so I'm 59 now. I was 54. But the story, the tale that I tell about when I was 10 years old
Mm-hmm.
is the most cited thing when people call me. That's the one story everybody remembers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty brief. So if you allow me, I'm happy to tell it right
Yes,
now.
please. Please. I'd love to hear that.
Okay, well, when this all unfolded in 2020, I was, well, first let me tell you, yeah, I was in a conference room at the hospital with neurologists, neurosurgeons, and nurses, and they had just told me that I had a brain tumor and fatal brain cancer, and that in all likelihood I would die relatively soon. So, what happened as I was sitting there is I was overcome by a memory that of something that happened to me when I was 10 years old. And it turns out that that memory is what enabled me to demand and receive um, emergency brain surgery that night. So what happened is the doctors were telling me, you've got this fatal brain cancer. We could, and I said, well, if I have a brain tumor, shouldn't you be doing brain surgery to remove it? And they all agreed with me at first, but then as soon as they agreed with me, they all started saying they wanted to wait for 3 months. They wanted a 3-month delay. And I kept asking them, well, why? Why would we want to delay?
Mm-hmm.
I just, I was recognizing myself. I'm not a neurologist, but I don't see the logic in letting a cancerous brain tumor grow in your head
Mm-hmm.
when you are able to remove it. But they kept pushing for the delay. And that's when this memory struck me. And when I say this memory came to me, it came to me stronger than anything has ever come to me before. It came into my brain
Mm-hmm.
with such a pressing urgency. I remember at the time that I thought, this must be from God because nothing has ever come into my brain that strongly. So here's the memory. When I was 10 years old, my father was a union construction worker. And
Okay.
on Saturdays, he used to take me to his construction sites. I was 10 years old one day. He took me to a construction site, and I'm climbing around the staging and I'm looking at all the tools and everything about. And pretty soon I bump into another carpenter. And this guy looked to be about 60. But was really kind of shocking is he was extremely muscular. He had big arms and muscles. He spoke with a booming loud voice. And, he had tattoos. He was quite intimidating to me. I was only
Okay.
10.
I can imagine. And
Yeah. But as soon as he sees me, he calls out to my father and he says, "Hey, Albert, your kid is here. Do you want me to explain the meaning of life to him?" And my father calls back and says, "Yeah, go ahead." So this big, tough construction guy looks at me, and when he talks to me, he keeps pointing right in my face. And like I said, he had a very loud voice, and he says to me, "Okay, kid, I'm going to tell you the meaning of life. You ready?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Okay. Well, in this world, you decide what you want or what you need. You decide." And he's pointing at me.
mm-hmm.
"You don't let anybody else decide. You decide what you want or what you need. And then when you know what you want, you go out into the world and you push, push, push until you get what you want, and you don't take no for an answer." And he says, "And that, my son, is the meaning of life. You got it?" And I said, "Yeah, I got it." So I leave, and that's that. But, a few decades later, I find myself in this conference room at the hospitals with these doctors telling me they want to delay the surgery. And this memory came to me so strongly, I thought, well, I'm going to listen.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was a message from God. So I was listening. And I said, no. I said, look, they were all telling me that they're the chief of neurosurgery and all this. And I said, well, that may be true. That's true. However, let's get one thing straight here. I'm the boss here. I'm making the decisions, not you.
Correct.
And I said, and what I'm saying is, I want the surgery right now, tonight. I'm not waiting 3 months or 3 weeks or 3 days. I want it now. So they pushed back really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I asked them 10 more times. 10 more times, they told me no. Finally, I got to the point they said, David, even if we wanted to do the brain surgery, we can't because the surgeon isn't here right now. He's not here. We can't do it. So I was getting frustrated and I was remembering this old carpenter who told me you don't take no for an answer. So I was determined not to take no for an answer. And I said, look, what is that right there? And I pointed, and he looks and he sees the telephone. He goes, what, the telephone? I said, yeah, that's right. It's a telephone. I said, I want you to pick it up right now and you call that brain surgeon and you tell him you don't care where he is or what he's doing. He needs to get back to the hospital right now for emergency brain surgery. So what happened? Well, they complied.
Oh,
They
that very
did, they
night?
right there, they did what I said. They picked up the phone, they called
Uh-huh.
the surgeon, they said what I asked, and 5 minutes later they tell me um,
He's on his way.
he's on his way back. Right. So
Wow.
great. I'm very happy with that. Have you heard the rest of the story?
No, I haven't yet, but that is
Okay,
very
well, let
interesting.
me
I think this is when you told yourself that you saved your own life. Basically, you really
Well,
did.
I didn't say I saved my life. The doctors told me that. What happened was the surgeon comes back to the hospital, and I'm in a hospital bedroom,
Okay.
and two nurses walk in and they say, hey, David, the brain surgeon has arrived. He's getting ready to do your brain surgery.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants to know if there's anything you want to say to him before he does your brain surgery. So I thought for a second, turned my head and said, yeah, tell him I say, don't fuck it up. And and I really said that. And they, of course, said, oh, we can't say that to him. And I said, look, you asked me what I wanted to say. That's what I want to say.
Right.
Well, anyways, my next memory is the next day I'm waking up in my hospital room
Okay.
and the surgeon comes in and he says, hey, David, I just want to let you know everything went perfectly. We extracted 100% of the tumor with no problems whatsoever. And he said, I know, and I said, okay, great, thank you. And he said, no, I don't think you understand what I'm saying. He said, that was a very delicate operation. And I really think the fact that we did so well and we have no problems is because we got in there so early. And he said, I know you had to push really hard to get the surgery, but what I'm telling you is I think you may have just saved your own life.
Oh,
So
all
that's
right.
that story.
Did faith or spirituality play in your recovery journey?
There's been a huge, thank you for bringing that up. It has
Mm-hmm.
been a huge spiritual and godly dimension to this whole um, experience.
Yeah, please tell me all about it.
Well, it kind of came rushing towards me. Like I said, in that hospital conference room, that memory came to me so strongly, but I almost felt like I heard God saying, "This is important. Make sure you listen." And all I can say, and I think this sounds a little, I don't know, unusual, but ever since this first happened, I really truly believe, and I can hear God talking to me quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would like to just say to those thinking of reading Uncommon Sense, I have a lot of stories in there about what used to happen. When I got out of the hospital, I went to a rehabilitation center. And almost every morning when I first woke up, God would talk to me and he would tell me the people I was going to see that day, whether it was going to be a good experience or a bad experience, who to who to try to get close to and who to stay away from. And there are other stories too. Everything that was told to me came true.
Oh.
And here's one that was just over the top. I wake up one morning
Mm-hmm.
and I hear God say to me, "Okay, David, today I'm going to send you a gift. You've been wanting something for a long time. You've been asking a lot of people, but nobody has brought it to you. But today I'm going to bring it to you." Now, when I heard that, I thought, okay, I got to be going crazy because this can't be true.
Yes.
And literally a minute later, the nurse walks into my room with an express delivery envelope from the post office. She
Mm-hmm.
goes, here, this is for you. It just arrived. And I said, well, what's this? She goes, I don't know. It's from the post office. It just came to you. So I'm bringing it to you. I said, okay. So what I had been asking people to bring me was you couldn't shave at the rehabilitation center. And I had quite a thick beard and I was really desiring to shave. I really wanted to shave. I
Mm-hmm.
asked quite a few family and other people to bring me a razor so I could shave, but nobody brought me one. Well, I open up this express envelope. The inside is packaged like a gift. It's got a razor blade,
Mm-hmm.
a small bottle of shaving cream, some aftershave. It's got everything I was looking for.
But who sent you that?
I was just going to tell you,
All
a good
right.
friend, a,
Getting excited with your story. It's very
yeah,
interesting.
a good friend of mine, Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
sent it to me, and I had asked her for a razor blade a couple weeks before. So, but at the same time, the fact that I heard this story from God and a minute later someone walks in and that's what it is, it just seems
Incredible.
quite spiritual, yes, and
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
Wow. Well, your subtitle mentions a Gen X tale. How do you think your generational perspective shaped your journey and your message with the book?
That that's a great question. Well, first, let me ask you, did you read my book?
I haven't yet. I was browsing in Amazon and I said, I'm just gonna get a copy of this. But the interview comes in first, in the
Yes.
podcast, but I'm gonna get a copy of it because this is really getting to be very, very interesting, especially that I could relate to that because I'm a Gen X myself. So that would be very interesting. And when you're at this age, you get crossroads all the time. And you're an inspiration. I may say that you are really an
Thank
inspiration.
you.
The way you push things to advocate for yourself, that is amazing.
Well, thanks. And that's really the answer to the Gen X story. I feel that when I look back at the GI generation, the silent generation, the Gen
Mhm.
X
The
generation,
boomers.
what I see with Gen X is we've really had to push hard. We had to push back, and we saw a lot of failure in the economy with our older generation
Mhm.
friends. And I think the easiest place for me to see a lot of difficulty for Gen X is in the workplace. I can't tell you how many baby boomers I've worked for that just really ran the companies into the ground.
Oh.
And and I talked to a lot of my friends and colleagues that are Gen X, and they've had a similar experience.
Mhm.
And that's how I found dealing with the cancer is you would ask like I want the brain surgery and you wouldn't get the answer that you want, but also you didn't get the answer that you felt was logical, and they couldn't explain really well enough why they wanted to delay. So I think being Gen X helped me because I just, like the old carpenter said, you just don't take no for an answer and you got to
Mhm.
keep pushing. And
But
that's a very rough way to look at things, but I think it's true.
correct. Um, with regards to your book, do you believe the lessons in your book could apply universally, like across all generations, not just for the Gen X?
Oh, absolutely. And I've gotten a lot of calls from a lot of people that are telling me that they're diagnosed with a very bad situation. Some of them have been diagnosed with the same cancer.
Hmm.
They read my book, and several, I'm going to say more than half of the people I speak to are telling me that they're adopting the lessons from the book and they're getting better results with their own doctors and things like that. So I'm also hearing, which surprised me a little bit,
Hmm.
I basically, when I wrote the book, all I did was tell the story of what happened to me over a period of maybe a year. When I looked and read it, I was surprised that there's some critical content. Again, I didn't make it up. It was what happened to me.
Hmm.
But with regards to, I feel funny almost saying it, with regards to women,
Oh,
specifically if I had a female nurse or a female medical professional,
uh-huh.
oftentimes, the level of just sheer indifference or unwillingness to help or frankly do their jobs was so profound that
Really?
I mean, I can tell you one story.
Yeah, please.
Well, when I was at the rehabilitation center, they had trouble with the kitchen. I don't know what the trouble was, but they weren't able to produce any food.
Hmm.
So one day comes, and from the first thing, 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, I don't get a shred of food, absolutely nothing. The second day comes, the exact same thing. So now I haven't eaten anything in 2 days, 48 hours. That's a long time to get absolutely nothing.
Right.
And the third day comes, and it's going the same way. And I'm sick, I'm in bed, and I'm beyond hungry. Now, one of the guys had come into the room and he had worked in the kitchen. And he said, look, if you're ever really hungry and you just need some food, just tell the nurse to come to the kitchen and say, I got a really hungry patient. Can you make him a ham and cheese sandwich? He said, we can always make you a sandwich. We can always do that. So I say, okay. So this is just one of the stories, but things like this happened all the time.
Mm.
The nurse walks into my room and I say, look, I'm going into my third day now where I haven't had a shred of food.
Must have been
And
famished that way. 3 days.
I'm famished. I said, I'm so crazy hungry. I mean, I can't think straight. And I told her about um, the guy in the kitchen said they're always willing to make you a sandwich. So I said, would you mind, could you ask the kitchen to make me a sandwich?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, no, she says.
Oh,
I say, well, I mean, I'm really starving. How come? And she says, I just can't. And I say, but why not? She says, I can't. I say, I understand you're saying you can't. What I'm asking you is why not?
right.
But she won't answer. She gets mad and she leaves.
That's strange.
Now, there's another little comedy that comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Again, now I don't mean this to be disrespectful,
It's all
but both of my roommates, one at the hospital, one at the rehabilitation center, told me, now these guys don't know each other, and they said, look, if you need something, anything at all, you have to be 100% certain that you only speak to a male employee. They said, do not speak to any females because they won't do anything. And that's it. So anyways, my roommate at the rehab center, when I got there, he told me that too. And he said, but I invented a game. I call it, what does he call it? Oh, gee, I'm forgetting. He had a good name for it.
for these female
Yeah, and I
nurses.
mean, I know I was also surprised to get a lot of calls from female friends
Mm-hmm.
that
Well,
told me they agreed, they read the book and told me, one of them told me she's in her early 60s. She told me I stopped talking to women a long time ago. And I said, what do you mean? She said, if I'm out and I'm just going about my business, I'll make an effort to speak to the men. I'll make an effort not to speak to women.
I think I would agree to that because
Well, I'm shocked at how many women called me and do agree with it, to the point where I really think that the book not only tells you a lot about the medical world, but I think it's a reflection on gender issues. So here's another thing. This rehabilitation center, it was a building that just had a really long hallway. So you found yourself walking in the hallway every day. And what happened was there were a lot of young black nurses that worked there.
mm-hmm,
Every time I passed one of them in the hallway, we shook hands, we backslapped, we high-fived, we
mm-hmm.
spoke to each other. We had a great camaraderie. And this story's in the book, but one day the nurse says to me, hey, David, good news. We're discharging you. You get to go home. So I said, oh, great. So she leaves, and I walk into the hallway. And one of these black nurses, young guys, sees me and he says, hey, David, everything okay? What's wrong? You all right? I said, yeah, the nurse just told me I'm going home. And he goes, what? And he puts his head up and he yells down the hall, hey, everybody, it's David. He's leaving. They're sending him home. And from the end of the hall, I hear somebody yell, no. And all of a sudden, about 30, maybe it's 20 or 30 young black nurse guys start running down the hall towards me. They all run up to me. We're, we're high-fiving, we're backslapping, we're all talking. There was just an intense level of friendship and camaraderie.
Mm.
So while this is going on, the nurses come up to me and they say, okay, you have to leave now. And they start pulling on my shirt to take me away.
Oh my.
But while they do this, these black guys are holding me on the other side and they won't let her take me. So
Mm-hmm.
they're pulling me back. And when I looked around me, it was very emotional. And a lot of these guys were upset. Some of them were crying. But it was in a good way. We all felt really close. So I can honestly say during one of the toughest days of my life, I was surrounded by really excellent, close, and caring friends I had all that were really strangers to me that I had just met. But here's the other thing that happened regarding the woman. So the main female nurse says to me, what's going on here? How come you're friends with all these guys?
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't know. I see them every day and we backslap and we talk and we've just gotten to know each other. So we're friends. And you know, Maria, she couldn't understand it. But why are you friends? How come you're friends? And I'm like, I don't know why we're friends. We're friends. We met, we like each
Yeah.
other, we're friends. And she really gave me such a hard time, almost like she didn't believe it, almost like we were doing something wrong. So finally I just said, okay, I want to leave. And I walked out on my own because I just didn't understand what her motivation for saying that was.
I
But
couldn't understand it as well.
I think it illustrates kind of the crazy world we live in.
You bet. Well, those are really nice stories, and I could read more of that in your book, right?
Oh yeah, it's really filled with a lot of stories.
Oh, that would be so interesting. But if you could sum up your book in one sentence, just one sentence or two to inspire someone who's feeling discouraged right now, and I'm sure there are a lot of us, I would include myself, what would you say?
Yeah, well, I think this is on Amazon, but the mantra for the book is I rebuke discouragement.
Mm,
I would say the most meaningful, helpful piece of advice, and really what the whole book is all about. Picture it that rough, tough, blue collar carpenter saying, you decide what you want or what you need. And when you know what you want, you go out into the world and you push, push, push until you
mhm.
get what you want and you don't take no for an answer.
That's right.
I I've been giving that advice out since I was 10 years old.
Also,
Nothing to do with this book.
oh,
And over the decades, many people have called me to say, David, I've been following that advice. I'm not going to get into people's personal stories, but people have made profound changes in their life just by taking that little piece of advice.
Wow, amazing stories. Where can my listeners find Uncommon Sense, and how can they connect with you if ever?
Uncommon Sense is available in most bookstores, on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, online. I would say the best way to connect with me is you can just look me up on LinkedIn
Hmm.
and all my, you got my info there.
And David, you said earlier that the cancer has gone back, and I'm sure you're gonna do it all over again. Push, 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 and you decide for your life and what you want it to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your remarkable story and the lessons you've learned along the way. Any last words for my listeners?
I think you were asking earlier about what's like the most meaningful thing in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Well, other piece of advice is I think it's very worth realizing that you yourself as an individual are truly uniquely powerful. That whatever situation you run into, yes, of course you're going to seek out experts and people to help you, but don't gloss over the fact that you should just think yourself. Think about what your instincts tell you. Think about what you think, because many times in life, you're the one who can produce the answers and not really the experts.
Thank you so much for
I
that.
I have just one recent story from the just maybe the past 2 months as I deal with
Mm-hmm.
this re-emerging brain tumor. I go to speak to a new doctor, and she tells me, well, you can't have another brain surgery because you can't already have a brain surgery and then get a second one. That's too risky. And again, making sure you think on your own. To me, I thought, well, that sounds illogical. And again, I asked her, well, why? Why do you say that? And she couldn't answer, and I kept asking why, and she kept not answering. And also, and I find this with all different types of people, even myself, men, women, young, old. But when she spoke, she didn't speak with confidence.
Oh.
I didn't hear confidence in her voice.
Mm-hmm.
So when I left her office, I was really scared because she basically told me she doesn't have a lot of options. She's very worried and she's not speaking with confidence. So I went to speak to my previous neurologist.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Maria, I hate to get on this road, but this was a man, and I just found him to be much clearer. He told me, no, you can have a surgery and then have a second one. And he told me we have excellent surgeons and we can do your surgery well done, no problem. So he spoke with confidence. He was clear and specific.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me to, like I said, recently I had another successful brain surgery. The other thing, and this might be helpful to anyone going through this,
Uh-huh.
but I am taking what's called immunotherapy medications.
Mm-hmm.
And these are medications that work at the cellular level to help your own immune system fight the cancer on its own. So, like I said, I'm just doing everything I can.
And that speaks volumes. you
But
know,
there again, I could have just listened to this first doctor and, oh, she's an
the female
expert.
doctor.
Yeah,
What
but
is
you
it?
know what?
What is it
She
with
was
women?
wrong.
Yeah. So obviously she was wrong because the second doctor, your previous doctor, spoke with confidence and you had a successful operation from that. And it's just amazing how you never give up. And it inspires most of us to trust our instincts and to find the courage to speak up for ourselves.
I give credit to my dysfunctional upbringing.
Oh, dysfunctional. Well,
Well, I grew up in the 1970s as a boy under 10, and I was surrounded by rough, tough
mm,
construction guys. For
yes.
instance, like we're talking about the ability of the female doctor to be clear versus the male doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But as a young boy, and I really do think this is true, if one of these older 1970s era guys asked me a question, if I ever said maybe or I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
they would yell at me. They might pull their fists out and say, look, when I ask you a question, I want an answer. I don't want to hear maybe and I don't know.
Yeah, straight answer.
So they really drilled that into me, but I don't think they acted that way with young girls. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
I understand. But anyway, David, such a great talk today, and thank you so much for sharing your story right here on the Author's Den. And I hope to, have you again on the show, on the podcast very soon. Are you planning to do another book aside from The Uncommon Sense?
Yes, I have a couple more books, actually, possibly three, that
Oh,
I've already outlined and I'd love to write. And I don't know how much experience you have with the publishing industry, but
well,
it
not much on the
doesn't.
publishing, but I'm all more on the broadcasting side. So,
Okay,
but
well, it
it's not every day that I speak to someone like you with so much positivity and that ability to just never say no, whatever life would, smack on you. And that is amazing. David, I think I have taken much of your time. Thank you so much. And I hope to hear from you very, very soon and have you on the show.
Maria, I would love to do the show again, and thank you for a very smart, intelligent, and enjoyable
Oh,
discussion.
I enjoyed it myself. Thank you so much, David. And to our listeners, well, you heard it from David. He's going to have three more books, and I'm sure I'm going to have him on the show again. So let's just wait for that. David, thank you
I
so
look
much.
forward to it.
Yes. And to our listeners, this has been Maria. Till next time.